Good morning, Portland. My name's Telcs, and I am a cross-pollinator. I imagine most of you are also cross-pollinators, though I know y'all look so agreeable this morning, it's hard to tell. I actually luckily found a test that we can take in order to find out, and it's not a right or wrong answer, it's basically just like a litmus test. You're somewhere on the scale, highly specialized, or you're a little more like a cross-pollinator. First question on this test. Has anyone in your life, either a spouse, a partner, maybe a parent, has ever said to you, could you please just pick one thing and stick to it? That happens. And then if you're ever in the doctor's office or possibly, God forbid, filling out a grant, and you have to think, oh gosh, I have to check a box. God, could I just write a paragraph? Could I call somebody? I mean, could I just talk on the phone? It's a little bit difficult. So, before we get started, I just wanted to say, I think in this digital age it's pretty important to quote your references, and so I wrote a little bit of a bibliography. I really actually think this is the type of cross-pollination I'm talking about. It's an integrated, fully intuitive, taking from what you know, every single experience in your life does matter. And I think we're pretty much in good company with this. Buckminster Fuller says, nothing seems to be more prominent about human life than wanting to understand all and put everything together. And he goes a little bit further to even say in his fantastic book, Operation Manual for Spaceship Earth, or Operating Manual, specialization is not the key to comprehensive thinking, it precludes it. Well, he does state amazing different examples, like animals that actually have been known to become they can become extinct if they get too specialized. There's something that happens when either flood or fire happens. It can get a little difficult. He mentions Da Vinci and saying how, as the first polymath, he was able to traverse many different disciplines very deeply, and although a fantastic creative mind, I'm not necessarily holding all of us to that standard. It's a different standard. It's about bringing them all together. So in order to talk a little bit about that, I think it's important that you understand my personal history, and it became pretty obvious pretty quickly where the cross-pollination came from. I started out pretty much actually wanting to be an inventor. I was lying awake at night trying to look in my watch face, trying to see how I could watch Chitty Chitty Bang Bang in it after hours. And you might laugh, but that is an incredible movie that has a lot to do with invention. And I swore by it as a child. I was like, oh man, how do you make something out of nothing? And I think that pretty closely followed right into artwork, because you're making something from scratch from your own imagination, something that didn't exist. So early enough, I went off to college and I studied humanities, which ends the talk right there. I think we're pretty much going to seal the fate as being a cross-pollinator. Humanities blends English with history, with literature. It puts it all together and helps you connect the dots. From there, I went to the University of Washington to get I thought it was going to be a sculpting degree, and it, bigger foundry, much more material, got really excited about it. And actually, there's a side note to this. I went for one summer to Central St. Martin's in London to do a summer course, a certificate course, I think, in fashion design and draping. And I went through it thinking, oh, I think this is maybe where I'll head. I'll go towards fashion design. And I realized I was still interested in something different. So when I get back to the UW, I realized we all have to take, and it was like mandatory course to take I guess just a smattering of, they show you everything that they have. And I happened to see a professor talk about industrial design, and for the randomest reason, he actually played a clip of the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang inventor scene, and I was like, this is my calling. Oh my God, this is meant to be. So I signed up for the course, thank God I got in, and really spent the next 3 years explaining and getting deep into why we're making a product, what's the purpose, what for, trying to solve the user's needs, not their wants. It really enlivened and went back to that beginning of wanting to be an inventor in a way that I didn't imagine. So from that experience, I moved to New York. I worked for a few small industrial design firms, but I kind of still had my eye on that fashion thing, and I was interested in it and got my feet wet by working at London Fog when they were trying to be more like a Burberry. This is a misfire, but in general, my job was really creative. I got to do, it didn't quite happen. I got to design hardware. I was designing all the flat sketches, acting as an industrial designer within the fashion world, which is, I mean, a great entrance job, acting as a design assistant and learning all I could. So from there, I went on to a menswear designer called Tom Brown, which you may be familiar with. I am actually wearing a Tom Brown suit today. There I started out as a design assistant, then a small company, 10 employees. I was doing production management before long. It was just everyone wearing a bunch of different hats. And then from there, I was at Helmut Lang for a brief minute, and that was an interesting time, and it taught me a lot about the religion of branding and labels. And as Theory had bought the company and Helmut was no longer there, I was only around for about 5 months, and that was interesting, because after being laid off, it hit me that I still had this thing, this other thing, this art that I'd been kind of putting it under the surface, working 80 hours a week. I'll get to it sometime. Just didn't know how or when or even how. Yep. So the art piece. It is a bit of a contention, because thinking about facing down the dragon, looking straight in the eye at the things you really want to make, but you're not sure how. I moved back to Seattle. I thought to myself, I need to be supported. I need to have space to build. My family's there. This is going to be good. But as I basically looked at my own experience like this, I realized that the world was looking at a little bit more like this. I'm pretty sure these overlapping points of the circles are reserved for the polyhyphenates, such as DJ, fashion designers, and model actresses. Good for them, good for them. What I was trying to attempt was to actually traverse all the worlds, and I had run into a little bit of difficulty. First thing, I had been shortlisted for designing a bike parking unit that was supposed to be an art unit, but also functioning bike parking, and I was down to the 4 finalists. I'm talking to the panel, and I think I spent the entire time arguing to the panel that I was indeed an artist, although my history looks like I'm just a designer, but really, no, I can do this other thing, right? And I think only one panel member was with me. He was like, I get it. And I was like, thank you. So I thought to myself, this is the most important thing. Let's try to examine why these are different. And for the sake of argument today, I'd like to actually split the two, art and design, and just delve in a little further. What makes them so different? What makes them, disciplines unto themselves? So first thing, art is subjective. Design, objective. This is a piece being shown at the Guggenheim with Robert Wilson's Works in Process Festival, where it was a performance group called Saint Genet, or actually it used to be called Implied Violence, now Saint Genet, and I was costuming and performing with the group for about 4 years. It was image-based work. It wasn't based on characters or a linear narrative. Most of the time after the shows, I'd get a lot of, what was that? Or, hey, cool. What, you get a lot of that, and it's almost the same as when you go to a museum, and you notice everyone's looking at a painting for probably about 10 seconds, and they look straight to the placard. And I admit myself that if it says untitled, I just wanted a little bit more. I wanted a little more information, but that's not what we get. You don't ask an artist, what is it? You enjoy it or you don't. On the flip side, you have design, which is completely objective in some ways. This summer, I was doing a project with Microsoft on a product that hasn't been released yet, if it ever does. And I was talking with one of the senior designers, Edie Adams, and she said this fantastic thing. She was talking to me about what I'm doing and all the things, and she just said, man, isn't it just a relief that design is just so objective? I mean, it either works or it doesn't. And I thought, yeah, that is easier. I mean, for some of us, I guess, I don't know. We have here art being interpreted and design being communicated. This is a piece of work from Jeff Koons, and I'll just let you interpret what you want. As compared to this graphic symbol or this graphic sign, if design is communicated, I hope that we all understand there is an infirmary somewhere nearby, if not right where we're standing. And if that information wasn't conveyed, then the sign didn't do its job, therefore, probably not good design. Here we have, lastly, art being emotional, design being motivational. And I really I don't want to actually give an example of a piece of artwork that I think is super emotional, so I just ask you all to think in your mind's eye of something that really hits home to you. And as you're imagining it, I mean, I love to bring up Genesis Purge from Throbbing Gristle and how he says we need to really use art to rewrite our routine, using it every day to figure out and question what it is that we do. And it brings that certain essence to our life that just, you know, the only thing that art really does on its own. And as the motivational factor, I mean, I hate to throw a wrench in that beautiful, you know, wheel that you were just imagining, but I want to bring up Obamacare. If it had been a slightly better designed site, we would have been motivated to sign up, we would have been excited about it, it would have been rewarding and easy to use, but not to dwell on bad design. Basically, the point is, with cross-pollination, I think we're best off if we can see both the worlds, but imagine melding them together. So I thought to myself, what could I use as an example for this? And I thought to myself, fashion. It's the one thing that I know very well. I've spent the last 10 years of my life or so dedicated to trying to figure out what makes it tick and unpack that, like this crazy TARDIS that just, you know, keeps going. So fashion is both subjective, objective. It's so quixotic that we all are touched by it. And I mean, as much as everyone has an opinion about this, you did come here this morning, you did put clothes on, even if they were just laying on your floor. Somehow they got into your house. You may not know how they got into your house, but you did consciously, I hope, this morning put them on your body without struggle or force. So, I often look to a book by Frank Alva Parsons that's called The Psychology of Dress, and it's fantastic. It's from 1921, and it's a tome. It says everything about the vanity of humans. It talks about the socio-economic, political reasons of how we dress ourselves, and I think this quote sums it up. The result in costume, as with other mediums, are but a material record of the great ideals that swayed the nation at the time of their creation. And I absolutely believe that. So it creates an emotion. It is motivational, but at some point I do actually want to say it's aspirational. People, in my time in fashion, I've seen people buy clothes that don't fit them because they love it. I've seen them buy clothes for just a label. They don't even care if the designer who just helmed the label is no longer there. They're just saying, I love this, I buy into it. It's the religion of branding, I want that. It's a fervor, almost. And I bring up this slide. This is from Tom Brown again, the outfit I'm wearing, from the time when I actually worked with him. And this is the craziest part. I mean, being subjective and objective, these suits are made, I mean, it brought, I think, maybe 10 different Italian suit makers out of retirement when his line started going at a clipping speed. I mean, this was well made to the point that it's like tectonic plates. It starts fitting you better as you wear it. You could put it in your trunk of your car, bring it back out, steam it back to good. You can put it back on. It's going to make you look like $1 million because it's fit just to you. But we did also have a runway show, and the runway show was kind of about the spectacle. The subjectiveness of it was really like, what is the taste of right now? Or like what would get Tom really excited? We'd make these lists, and sometimes it would be just like flowers. That's it. Yeah, let's cover one blazer with 50 flowers, or maybe 1,000 flowers. Great, and we'll put it down the train. And this was specifically for our own enjoyment and to get out something that he's seen in his mind that he wanted to see in the world, that pure creativity. And at first, you know, he didn't expect anyone to want to buy that. It was more like, oh, the Barneys will still pick up the gray suit. It's very, you know, they can choose to hem it, though we do suggest lots of room for the flood. And by setting up these rules about fashion, it was very easy for people to buy into it. And he found out over time that because of the spectacle and the emotion that was brought to the brand, we started getting buyers who wanted that flower blazer. I mean, specifically Japan first, they're kind of ahead of the game there. But the buyers would come and they would say, I would like that piece, because we'll just buy one and put it in the window, and you know, we represent the brand. So back to the point, you really do better a product by using one discipline and one craft to better the other. So this is where it gets personal. As I came back to Seattle and started to work on my own, from that piece at the Guggenheim, I was able to secure a grant, or not a grant, a residency at the Watermill Center, which is in upstate New York. And I had gone to, randomly, like in the middle of February, I had to make my own work, and I was up against a mountain of it. I had never done it before by myself. And so I went to a dinner party, and basically talked to someone who was at the Hauser and Wirth Gallery, and he said to me, you know, don't be so worried. It's really like art wants to be fashionable, and you know, fashion wants to be considered smart, like design and also artistic, and design really wants to be artistic, so you're kind of in a good place. But then further, I went to start doing the work. Next year, I took it to the Henry Art Museum in Seattle, and I was discussing with Louise Croquet, the director-curator there, and I was just like, I don't even know how to begin to explain this. I can't write a tiny bio, it's too much. I make textile sculptures, and I make them using artisanal sewing techniques. I use embroidery, pleating, darning. I singe the edges of things. And starting out at the Watermill Center, which was a performance art laboratory, I want to put the clothes into performance. I want to see them worn. And having had a history in menswear, plus just really not wanting to get into the dialogue about women having to be too thin or as models, I just decided put them on men. So I took it out to the woods. We went to the woods to perform it, and then again at the America Society in Manhattan, and got to show it in a salon-style presentation like Dior would have done. And it was important to me to actually dress the models myself. I think it was both to kind of pull back the curtain and allow the designer to come forward instead of being sequestered away or as something behind the scenes. I wanted to be inclusive. I wanted to show that almost subservient role of dressing the muse and the model in person and showing how long it takes to really do the adornment. The second dowsing was done at the Red Square at the UW, and it was shown 3 times in public for free, the most democratic audience as possible, trying to be as inclusive as possible, to subjugate, get away from all the exclusivity of fashion and the, you know, flashing bulbs and everything. The performances were played to this music that's being played right now, which is set at 432 hertz, which is slightly lower than the typical 440. It's supposed to open the heart chakra and also the throat chakra, so it kind of sets a tone. And as you put the pieces onto people, it kind of takes on a new patina, much like a ballet dancer who has dressed in and danced in, sweat in her tutus, and it takes a sewer to take them in and out of the costume sometimes as a new prima ballerina shows up, and it just has this patina, this sweat, this energy of the performer set into the garment. And I think that something happens when that goes down. It's almost like all of us here today, there's a changed experience, or possibly like at a dinner party with friends, you'll have a different moment when you leave than when you showed up. And so when all was said and done, I took off all the pieces from the models, and I like to put them into the gallery again, or into a museum. And the point being, they become art object. Placed on these armatures that are individual to them, the crowd can come up and anyone can see it up close, examine it for what it is. It's not just a flashy picture that's been photoshopped and put in a magazine. It's there for you to see. So I explained all that to Louise, and he was like, yeah, that's a lot. And I said, it's basically like Mary Poppins' bag, explaining all these things, how the cross-pollination comes together to create this moment. And he just said 3 little words. He just said to me, own the middle. And owning the middle is what he meant. He just said that liminal space between one discipline and the other, your experience altogether creates the whole. And it reminded me of that moment back at the Watermill Center with Christopher Canizares, who had talked about the art being fashionable. And I remember Christopher actually said, he said, it's all about, he said again 3 little words, which is odd. It was patience and confidence. He said it again, he goes, patience and confidence. And I took that to heart. I really think with cross-pollination, it's about bringing in every part of your life, and you're kind of going down these paths of life, and you're realizing that you're kind of braiding a thread behind you and weaving that thread. And it's up to you to look back up the trail and realize that you've braided quite a few, and then you can take them and put them together to create this tapestry that is your work. And I just want to encourage everybody to use your own work, look inside and make that the thing that is your cross-pollination and probably your best work. Thank you.